Your paycheck is not always right. Nearly 44% of employees have discovered a payroll error at some point in their career. These are statistics built on the things that were actually found and reported. So this is only based on the numbers from those people who are actually taking a look at their pay stub and making sure that it's correct. Hello, my name is Hill Howard Banks, better known in these internet streets as Ms. Indigo Blue. I'm starting a new channel. It's structured around my book series, Manifest That Dream Books, and today we're going to do something that most of us have never, ever done. Those of us who have been working for years upon years, and those of us who are newly employed. And it's something that is vital for us to do. What is it, you say? Today, we are going to sit down and read our earning statements because here's what I need you to know. Your paycheck is not always right, and the data backs it up. So here's some statistics. According to 2025 surveys by Hi Bob, nearly 44% of employees have discovered a payroll error at some point in their career. And of those, 42% said those errors happened repeatedly, monthly, or even every single pay cycle. That means nearly half of us are losing money. And in 80% of cases, guess who found the mistake? Not the HR department, especially not if it paid out in their favor. But most of the time, it was the employee. That means it's up to you to find their errors and make sure that they get corrected. So, go ahead and grab your earnings statement.
I can't believe it, my first paycheck. $210.
And let's get into it. All right, so there's going to be some general information on everyone's earnings statement. Of course, your name and your employee ID number are going to be on your pay stub. If your company hasn't given you an ID number that particularly identifies you within that company, they may also be using your social security number. So you could see your complete social security number on an earnings statement or just the last 4 digits with a bunch of X's. Either way, if you're getting a paper paycheck and you have that earnings statement tab attached to it, that's a piece of paper that you don't want to handle loosely. You want to make sure that you are keeping it safe and then discarding it correctly with a shredder so that no one can get your personal information. They could potentially have your name, your address, your social security number, and enough information to fraud you. So, that being said, at the top of the check, you should find your name, most likely your address, and your employee ID. You will also find your employer's name and address on the pay stub. Sometimes this doesn't match the name of the employer that you work for. Many things like fast food restaurants have parent companies. It could be the actual DBA, what they're doing business as on your pay stub, or it could be the parent company name, which is like the LLC partnership or corporation that runs the company that you work for. So take a look at that and make sure that whatever is on that pay statement is also what matches your W-2 at the end of the year. All right, so we're going to start taking a look at when this paycheck was for. So you have a pay period with a pay period start date and a pay period end date. So this tells you exactly what days you worked and what days you just got paid for on this paycheck. Normally there's also a pay date, and the pay date tends to be different than any of the days in the pay period. Most likely if you're paid bi-weekly, then your check then comes in the middle or the end of the following week. If you're paid weekly, then you usually get that pay at the end of the next week. You're also going to have a check number or direct deposit reference on your pay stub. So if you've chosen to get direct deposit, You may not even get a paper earnings statement. You might have to log into a portal and download each statement or take a look at it online to go and make sure that your information is correct. So you just want to notice the direct deposit reference. If there's any issues with it getting to your bank, if you have incorrectly given them the information for your routing number or your bank account number, then you could be able to identify that information here. Then there's the department or cost center. So this is relevant if you transfer departments, if you got a raise, or if you change job roles and you still work for the same employer, or if you're someone who has a part-time position in one department and a part-time position in another department, especially if they pay you differently for each role, because you want to make sure that the hours that you worked in this role at that rate are correct, and the hours that you worked in that department at that rate are also correct. So I know none of this right now feels exciting, but people who catch errors are the people who read the whole page, not just the bottom number. So let's keep going. We're going to take a look at gross pay. This is what you earn before any deductions are taken out. This is the amount that if you have an offer letter or they tell you what your earnings are going to be per year, this is what that amount is based upon. So this is before any deductions are taken out. This is the amount that's used for things like taxes, for applications for apartments, cars, homes, things of that nature. So this is an important number, but it's not the number that you take home, and it's not the number that you're going to be able to utilize in your budget. Because yes, we're going to be talking budget on this channel. I've created a budget planner, and this is one of the first steps to getting you prepared to make sure that your budget is correct. Knowing exactly how much money you're bringing in and how much money you're going to be able to work with in your budget. All right, so gross pay can include multiple components. Each one should appear on its own line. So there's going to be base pay or regular pay. So this is your hourly amount multiplied by the number of hours that you worked, or a set salary if your organization pays you a fixed amount of money for this period. There's also overtime pay, and under federal law, most non-exempt employees are entitled to 1.5 times their regular rate for hours worked beyond 40 in a week. So this must appear separately. If you worked overtime and you do not see it on this line, or the rate looks incorrect, flag it immediately. Then there's shift differentials. If you work evenings, nights, weekends, holidays, many employers pay an additional rate. This is seen most often in factories and in medical. This should appear as its own line item. It's one of the most commonly missed entries. So what I mean is they pay a base rate for first shift normally. Second shift gets a differential rate of maybe a few more cents or another dollar, and then third shift would get even more. And sometimes your shifts are gonna overlap. So if you're someone who works 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., you might be completely second shift, where you would see that differential for your whole shift. But if you're someone who works something like 1:15 to 9:15, then you might get those first couple hours at that first shift rate, and the rest of your hours should be at that differential rate. And then the same works for third shift. Third shifts tend to start at 7 p.m. approximately. So if you work from 3 again to 11, you might see that second shift 3 p.m. to 7, and then that 7 p.m. to 11 might be on a different pay rate. So it just depends on what they consider first shift, second shift, third shift hours. And then it just depends on if they're paying a different amount for second shift than they are for third shift. Just make sure that you know, and make sure that you are making sure that they are calculating that into your pay. Then you have bonuses and incentive pay. So some people get sign-on bonuses, annual bonuses, referral bonuses. These are taxed differently than regular wages, so they are not included in your regular wages. You should always see them listed separately on your paycheck. So if they told you they gave you your bonus and it's in there and it's not written in there, then it's probably not there. Retroactive pay. So if you received a pay raise that was backdated, so say for instance, you got a pay raise as of the first of the year, but you didn't get a paycheck until the end of January that reflected it. So it would have all the money that you received from the first of the year to that day that you worked, and that paycheck and the check that you received in the beginning of January would have reflected of income that was based on what you had earned previous to your raise. So you would get that retroactive pay in that second January pay stub, and then you want to make sure that it's also in there correctly. The other gross amount that you will see is YTD or year to date. Most earning statements have a separate column for year to date when it comes to your cumulative earnings since January 1st of that year. So this is your running total, and it matters for Social Security calculations that we will get to shortly. So your gross pay is the number that your employer promised you. It's not the amount that you get. Everything that follows is what comes out of that. So we're going to now take a look at the subtractions, but you want to know your gross because it's your baseline for everything. So there are some mandatory deductions, and these are not optional. These are deductions that most every employer takes out. There is one small exception, and that is if you have like a federal position or a government position. Sometimes these things aren't taken out, and you want to make sure that you know that before you accept a position for an organization that does that. So you're going to file a paper called a W-4, and those are going to determine how much taxes federally are taking from your pay stub. And your filing status, your number of dependents, and any additional withholding that you decide that you want them to take out should be noted on that form before you start working. There's also state income tax taken out if you work in a state where earnings are taxable. So some states that do not tax are Nevada, Wyoming, and there's a few others. If you live in one of those states, comment your state down below so that people will know if they should be getting state taxes taken out or not. Then there's some states, right? All of our states border another one or two states, and sometimes you live in one state and you work in another state, and so they'll usually have an option for you to complete which of those you need taken out of your paycheck. So you want to make sure if you live in Ohio but you work in Michigan that you have the right taxes being taken out of your paycheck. There's Social Security tax. This is a fixed number. Right now it's 6.2%. This funds your retirement and disability benefits through the federal government. So it applies to your earnings up to $176,100. Once you make that much money or more, then you stop paying into Social Security. So you want to watch your year-to-date column if your annual income is getting close to that, so that when you hit that amount, that Social Security stops being deducted from your paycheck. Medicare tax. This number's fixed as well, 1.45%. And this funds our health care coverage for Americans 65 years old or older. And unlike Social Security, there's no wage cap. This one is always taken out no matter how much you earn. It applies to every dollar you earn, no matter how high your income goes. So if you earn over $200,000 per year, an additional 0.9% Medicare surcharge kicks in. You want to take note of that as well. Your employer is required to begin withholding the pay period that your income for the year exceeds $200,000. There's also local or city taxes, and sometimes these are taken out and sometimes they're not. A lot of times it depends on if your work location is located within a city or not. If you work at a location that's in a county, it's possible that they're not taking any city taxes out. You want to make note of that, because if you live in the city and you work outside of the city, you will have to pay. If you work in the city and you live outside of the city, you will have to pay. But if you work outside of the city and you live outside of the city, this should not be taken out of your paycheck. So, those are some of the things that you want to pay attention to when it comes to taxes. These are some real things. They're mandatory and they're for your future retirement, my future retirement, those who are currently retired to be taken care of, and things like the roads being repaired that we drive on. And I'm not here to argue against them. I'm just here to say make sure they're correctly calculated when they are coming out of your paycheck. Because again, if it's falling in someone else's favor, they're most likely not going to tell you. So now we'll take a look at voluntary deductions. And this is something that you agreed to give up in exchange for something else. And these things normally are pre-tax, but some of them can be post-tax, meaning that the income that you received in your paycheck, the taxes are taken out first and then it's coming from your net, but most of them tend to be pre-tax deductions. We have here your health insurance premiums. So it's your portion of the employer offered medical, dental, vision coverage. Most employers sponsor plans and they split part of the premium between yourself and your employer. And your portion comes out of your check. Pre-tax in most cases, which lowers your taxable income, which is a good thing on the end when you go to get your money back when you file taxes. You still want to verify that it matches what you agreed to during open enrollment. Then there's flexible spending accounts or health savings accounts. If you elected to contribute to an FSA or HSA, this deduction should appear and match your annual election divided by your number of pay periods. In our next video, we're going to be discussing pay periods and how it looks different on a paycheck. So remember to subscribe and like this video if you want to deep dive further into that information. Research has shown that HSA miscalculations cost companies an average of 130 hours to correct, which tells you how often this number is wrong. So make sure you take a look at that. Then you have your retirement contributions. So whether they're offering 401k, 403b, a pension, this is what you elected as your percentage, which is usually a flat dollar amount or a percentage. So some people have a percentage rate and some people have elected a flat dollar amount, two different things there towards their retirement account. And typically there's also a match, but that wouldn't be a deduction that would be coming from your paycheck. That would be something that your employer would be paying. Again, just make sure that the amounts match what you decided you wanted to put into your account. Other optional things are life insurance and supplemental health or life coverage. If you elected voluntary life insurance, supplemental disability, STD, LTD, accident coverage, these will appear as individual line items as well. Lump sum benefits deductions with no breakdown are a red flag, so you should know exactly what each dollar covers. Each of those should be listed separately. So short-term disability, long-term disability, life insurance, supplemental life insurance, they all should be listed separately, especially because most often different companies are responsible for maintaining those benefits. Other things that you might see come out of your paycheck are like union dues, parking or transit fees. Sometimes there's uniform fees, equipment fees if you work from home, but you rent a laptop or something to work from. These are all things that are going to be listed in the deductions. And then we have those one things that sometimes take people by surprise. They're called garnishments, court order deductions. So sometimes when people are responsible for paying child support, or if you have an old landlord that you didn't quite pay correctly and you still owe some money or some credit bills, anything that your social security number was used to borrow that you didn't pay back can come back to haunt you in your paycheck. So those types of deductions can be seen and will be listed on your paycheck as well. Most often it's child support, student loan garnishments, tax levies, and then any dispute that you went to court with someone over and you lost and there was a monetary amount awarded to them and you haven't paid it off, they are able to go and file that in a court and request that your pay be deducted and garnished. All right, so now we're gonna get to the nitty gritty, all the money that we get to use after all the deductions are taken out. This money is called your net pay, and this is your real number. This is the number that you use when you are going to budget your income and pay yourself and your bills properly. So, this is what you get when you've taken all of the voluntary and involuntary deductions from your gross pay. And this is the amount of money that you're going to live on. So this is why this matters so deeply. Most people build their financial expectations around their gross salary. And that's that, again, number that's in their offer letter, the number that they say that they're paying you, but in all actuality, it's not the number that you're working with. So it's not the number that you should be using. You want to be using your net pay. And there's a special way that you should hierarchy your needs when you are utilizing your net pay. And again, stick around for more videos if you want to dive deeper into that. I'm going to now go ahead and talk about how it looks on your pay stub. So the income that actually would come to you in check form or by direct deposit would be your current net pay. And the money that they've given you since you either started a job, or if you worked that job last year, you continue to work it this year, it would started over at January 1st, and it would have run cumulatively to the date that you are being paid for in the year to date column. So again, current pay is in one column, and that reflects the money that they gave you this paycheck. And then year to date is the money that they've given you all year. So let's talk about the errors that are most commonly seen on these pay stubs so we kind of know what to look for. The most occurring errors, incorrect hours and missed time punches. Failure to capture shift differentials and overtime pay correctly is another high occurring error. Benefits deductions that do not match employee elections is another occurring error. New employees not entered into the system, missing their first paycheck entirely, that would suck. Union dues applied at the wrong rate, incorrect state withholding after a move or a transfer, PTO and sick time failing to accrue. So that's one of the things that we forgot to talk about being on your paycheck. Some paychecks have this, some don't. Some you would have to go into your portal and take a look and see how much your sick and pay is accruing. But if you use sick pay or if you use paid time off during the pay period that the pay stub is for, that should be listed in your paycheck. And it should be listed separately from your regular pay, and it should be paid at the same rate as your regular pay. This is one of the things that is most often incorrect as well. Think about these statistics that we have been talking about in this video and recognize that these are statistics built on the things that were actually found and reported. So this is only based on the numbers from those people who are actually taking a look at their pay stub and making sure that it's correct. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm one of those people who I pretty much know how much money I'm supposed to be getting. So if it were off $1 or 10, I may not know. My son, on the other hand, give him every penny that he's earned. I see him checking his pay stub all the time. I've heard him calling multiple times to HR and saying, hey, my paycheck is wrong. Where was my overtime? I worked this many hours and it only shows this. And so that's vitally important, especially if you're a person who works a job where your hours vary. Me, I pretty much have, for the past however many years, had a job that worked 40 hours per week. So if I'm working 40 hours at this rate, and I might get a little bit of overtime in there, okay. But for someone who might work 35 hours this week, 45 hours next week, 28 hours in a couple other weeks, you really have to keep an eye on your paycheck and make sure that it's correct. So if you do find an error, what you need to do is report it to your HR department. You want to document it in writing. You want to attach proof. So you want to attach a proof of the pay stub that you received, or download a copy of your earnings statement. And if you have a way to show what your punches actually looked like, take a copy of that and include it all for them and tell them, hey, it looks like my paycheck is incorrect. I believe that my punches showed that I worked this amount during this pay period and I only got paid for this amount, or I worked this amount of hours at this rate, but I got paid for this amount of hours at that rate, and it should have been this. Make sure you spell it out correctly to them, exactly what you think the error is. Allow them to give you some feedback if they look at it and they see something different, but don't just take their word for it if it comes up something different. Make sure you go back, look at the paperwork, compare it to what they're saying, and make sure that at the end of the day, you get your money for your time, because you can't get your time back ever. All right, so you just did something most people never do. You learned how to read that document, and that governs your financial life every single pay period. And if you're going to plan on budgeting, you want to make sure that what you have coming in is what you plan on putting out, so that you don't end up coming up short. So make sure you take a look and notify your human resource department if you think something is off. If there's something on your paycheck that I didn't cover, comment it down below so that we can get that cleared up. In our next section, we're going to take that net pay number and do something powerful with it. So again, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. I'm going to get out of here, and before I do, I want to leave you with my mantra, which is activate your power, because when you know your power, you know your worth. I'm Miss Indigo Blue Hill Howard Banks. Thank you so much for stopping through. I'll see you here again next time. Ciao.